Hello, welcome to the Trews. I'm Russell Brand. I'm host of the Trews. Do subscribe to the Trews, because the more you subscribe to it, the more we can grow it. And the more we can grow it, the more we can change the world. And God knows the world needs changing, because we're learning today about student debt, student protest, debt in general. In the midst of life, we are in debt, etc.
What do they want to tell Parliament? Well, they want to tell them that they want to see an end to tuition fees. But of course, this protest is we'll immediately draw comparisons with the protest back in 2010.
We're immediately drawing those comparisons. I'm going to do it now. There's no time. The comparison has been drawn. So what I'm interested in is, yes, of course, student debt comes about because we've gone from a state where we regarded education as a right, that we've got a right to education, we should be educating people, to regarding education as a business. Education is something you've got to buy, a commodity. Health and education are becoming products that can be sold. Now, intuitively, humanly, we don't think that's right, do we? We sort of think, hold on, aren't we meant to educate each other and take care of each other? No, we're not. Or we are, but there's a price tag on it. In the UK, students now graduate with an average of 44 grand. That's a massive debt to have, isn't it? With the student loan book expected to grow from 46 billion in 2013, that's the year that it was before, to 330 billion in 2044. Remember this figure, 46 billion. That's what it had cumulatively become by 2013. 46 billion. So we've got to get that 46 billion from somewhere if we're going to believe in the old numbers illusion, and there's no sign that people are ready to start abandoning the belief system around numbers that we've all invested so much in. So let's see if there's any way of getting that 46 billion other than students who have been charged in the education business. Education's what you need.
Back then they were protesting about the idea of introducing tuition fees. Now, 4 years later, this is a different generation of students. They are the ones that have been affected by these fees.
We're against the idea of it. Fuck off. We're against the actualness of it. You can also fuck off. Shows you, doesn't it? People knew at the time, hey, come on, don't charge us student fees. We'll protest against it. We're going to charge you. Even people that promised that they wouldn't charge you, in the end, did charge you. And now, hey, it turns out that really does have a negative impact. 70% of graduates in our country, or my country, Britain, 73% of graduates will not repay their debts in full. So each year, taxpayers foot the bill for millions of pounds of cancelled loans. So it's not only the students who are getting charged for their debt, it's you're nothing to do with it. You're a taxpayer. You thought, I'm not going to student. Oh, I don't be a student. So well, bollocks it. Like, rubbish. I ain't going out of Doncaster University, wear a long scarf, hang around with birds, pontificate, read Proust in a cafe. You can fuck off, mate. You will also be charged.
And they want to bring an end to this. Will the politicians listen? Well, clearly in 2010 it didn't work. The fees were brought in. Will they listen today? Well, clearly we'll have to wait and see.
Politicians won't listen unless listening becomes the easiest thing to do. This is what you learn through activism and protest, that you have to get to the point where you're thinking, oh my God, this is worse than I was enjoying not listening, but now all this stuff is happening. We'll have to listen, because look, they're getting nearer and nearer to our houses. They're getting nearer and nearer to realising that this system doesn't work and doesn't represent them. Higher education doesn't typically deliver on student aspirations. About a third of graduates don't get jobs that relate to their education. They don't get graduate jobs. That job you're doing, does it relate to your education that you're in massive debt for? Oh no. So you may as well not have done it? Yes. And then it wouldn't have been in the debt? Yes. What a mad, crazy system. A mad system where people are charged for education that should be free, then don't use the education that they should have had. Meanwhile, there's this sense of corrosion and breaking communities. What is the role of debt in society? Why do people in power want the people that they govern to be in debt?
The people are organising it, saying that they are not intending or not expecting any violence later on, but clearly with thousands of people marching through the streets of London, it's difficult to plan for exactly what will happen and every eventuality.
Don't try to encourage violence, Richard. I mean, but with thousands of people that are in debt, there could be a bit of... it'd certainly make my broadcast more interesting if someone was to throw a potato. Give them a potato. Give them a potato. It's not just our country, Britain, obviously, even though countries, as we know, are imaginary concepts that is affected by this. Education in the US is Well, I think we nicked the idea of charging for education from them. Their system is broken, greedy for profit colleges, skyrocketing tuition rates, and the number of people taking on a lifetime's worth of debt before they can legally drink. I'm out of debt, and I can't even unwind at the end of a long day. Instead of providing a ladder to a better life in America, your country, America, if you're an American, higher education often reinforces class and race-based disparities, and our government is not doing anything to provide relief to students in the worst case. One example of the race disparities that are induced by this unfair and corrupt education system in the United States of America is that, on average, white high school dropouts have more wealth than black college graduates. I graduated from college. Yes, but what colour are you? I happen to be black. Then you're going to have less money than this guy. Hey, buddy, what's going on? That's nuts, isn't it? And like Bill O'Reilly will tell you that all of the problems that the black community are facing, whether it's in Ferguson or anywhere, is a result of what, Bill?
But the primary reason is not skin color. It's education.
Don't address this issue, then it's clearly not a contributory factor.
As far as we know, there is a rump of the demonstration which is still moving around the streets of Westminster, being followed very closely by police. This free education protest has gone on for several hours longer than was scheduled.
You might want to look at strikedebt.org and strikedebt UK. These are interesting organisations that are campaigning in the area of student debt. Debt Collective, a new group associated with the Rolling Jubilee, that's a movement I think that emerged from Occupy, has provided more direct relief to current and former for-profit college students than state and federal agencies combined. Activist groups from Occupy are more helpful than state and federal agencies combined. Systems are already emerging that are more effective than the organisations that you pay your tax pounds and dollars to. So anyone that's telling you, for example, that we should be creating new systems outside of the mainstream systems is probably a really nice guy.
What's their central complaint and their central demand?
They basically want to establish free education.
In the religion of Islam, the concept of usury is talked about as being pretty uncool, and in fact a sin. To charge people unreasonable rates for borrowing is sinful. In most religious doctrines, there is talk of debt jubilees. In the Bible, our Bible that the old Christians are into, it talks about cancelling debt every so often. Now, we know debt cancellation is possible in the financial sector because in 2007, when there was a massive financial collapse, their debts got not only cancelled, but their problems were quantitatively eased. We continue to print money and pump it into the financial industry while ordinary people are forced to take to the streets to have their student loans, which they shouldn't have had to take out in the first place, cancelled. So you can see a very, very corrupt system at play.
They believe that the cuts to education that they've seen are doing irreparable damage to this country. They want to see a situation which has just happened in Germany recently, where tuition fees have actually been scrapped and higher education is free for all. That is what they're pushing for.
You'll note that in Germany, all higher education is free. Germany got a lot of progressive good ideas, haven't they? Whether it's having football fans on the boards of football clubs, having ordinary workers on the boards of big companies, not charging for higher education, and that's why the German economy is in such a dreadful, dismal state. What? Oh, it's the best one in the world.
They say that's the new campaign, and they're going to be carrying out other demonstrations, other protests over the coming weeks.
Okay, so I think it's clear that student debt isn't a necessity and is a massive impediment socially, both to the people who suffer from it and the society as a whole, that there are religious precedents in Christianity and Islam, probably in all the religions, I didn't have time to check, to say that keeping people in debt, whether it's student debt or credit card debt or Wonga payday loans, is a way of imprisoning people, keeping people enslaved to debt. People are not free. Your most basic requirements are attached to massive debt. Your house puts you in debt, your education puts you in debt. How can you be free to be a civilian of the world if you're tyrannised by debt? Education isn't a business, education is a right. Health isn't a business, health is a right. These practices are evidently racist. Now, earlier on we mentioned that in Britain there's £46 billion worth of accumulated student debt. Do you know this thing? Because you should know it. Every year, £4.6 billion is lost as a result of tax evading practices in the UK, or tax avoiding, I have to say in some special way. Hey, I didn't evade that tax, I avoided it. Sir, forgive me. Forgive me for accusing you of evading when you're avoiding. I got that one of the diphthongs wrong. Yes! How dare you use the wrong diphthong? In 10 years, if you were to close that particular tax loophole that's leaking out 4.6 billion quid, you could end student debt. So why don't you support the activist groups that we've mentioned, like strikedebt.org and Strike Debt UK? Why don't you support the National Union of Students, who are calling for free education funded by progressive taxation and increased business revenue and by taxing the wealthiest? Is calling on the government to phase out tuition fees and restore public funding to British universities. Thank you very much. Education is a right. Health is a right. Debt is being used to enslave us. Take to the streets. Join one another creatively, directly. Act against these institutions that are oppressing us. This is some Trews. Subscribe here. Subscribe here to the Trews.
Nose is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the nose. If the nose was true, I want some Trews. Let's have some Trews.